Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And we are, full disclosure, dear listener, due to scheduling, we had to change things up. This is the AM edition. We could either be super tired or we could be extra perky, like the morning show hosts on TV.
I'm going with super tired.
Yeah, I was going to say, we might go with super tired, though. I think that's probably a little bit more likely. But, we're going to see how the show goes. Yeah. This week is the first week of our review of all of the amazing wonderfulness we got to view in 2021. Every single one of these films is an absolute A+. Don't you think, Ryan?
Mm-hmm. Or we wouldn't be talking about them.
Right. Yeah, because we would never want to bore you, dear listener, with a movie that frankly you shouldn't see. But boy, every single one of these movies, chef's kiss. Mwah, no, that's not really the case.
We wouldn't want to sully our lips with names of movies that did not at least approach perfection.
That's true. And I think we can all agree that when we all think back on 2021, we will always think perfection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Art reflects life, my friends. It's always been us.
Indeed it does. So we're going to hop right into to that list here in a moment. But real quick, I wanted to make sure if there was anything else, little on-air production meeting, because I realized I forgot to ask Ryan about this before we hit play on all of the sounders. Is there anything we needed to discuss at the top of the list here?
No. I think the list will be.
Sorry, Siri decided to hop on in and chime in. I must have said
not
something.
An equal partner in this podcast. I want everybody to know.
No.
I did watch, although I'd seen this before, I didn't remember anything about it. That's not usually a good sign that's not usually a sign of a good, event movie, that you had some images and some things that you were like, oh, I remember that, but what was that even about? And it's a kind of weird time to talk about this, but I just want to roll this by you since you asked. This was not my plan to talk about this. Sure. I watched the Fantastic Beast, The Crimes of Grindelwald last night.
Oh, sure.
And that movie did relatively, it actually did pretty big blockbuster business, particularly internationally, but it did fairly poorly for a Wizarding World movie. I believe it's the least highest grossing one. And more than that, although it was relatively well critically reviewed, people really hated it. And I don't remember why. Was there one specific reason? Do you remember what was because I watched it and whatever it was didn't jump out at me. You know what I mean? I mean, it had a little bit of Spider-Man 3 going on in it, where it was very, very busy plot wise. But I sort of like that, because I watch a lot of these and they're like, something bad shows up and everyone points at it, and then I thought the complex nature of the plot was actually one of the joys of it, but I don't really know what people hated.
Yeah, I
That
honestly don't
obviously divorced from
remember.
any real world concerns that I don't really want to talk about.
Right.
I feel like that wasn't part of the narrative when this film came out. Maybe it
Um,
was.
I'm not sure if it was or not. I sort of feel like though, I mean, are you talking about the Johnny Depp issues?
No, I mean, not really. No,
Yeah. Or are you talking about more of the J.K. Rowling issues? Yeah.
Neither seemed to affect this movie very much.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just talking about the movie.
Yeah, I don't remember why, it is, it does have mixed to average reviews. It did
I can
it
understand the mixed to average reviews. It's just a middle chapter of a thing that doesn't feel super satisfying in itself, but it's very artfully done and very beautiful.
It didn't even really do all that well internationally. I'm not entirely.
Yeah, it did much bigger numbers internationally, but it wasn't like normal there and really poor here, like something like Golden Compass was. It was down everywhere. You're right about that. So
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe just not enough happening or something. I just feel like there was something that stuck in people's craws that I couldn't get out, that I couldn't find in it. Someday we'll dive off and talk a little bit about J.K. Rowling and what's going on with that. I don't think we're ever going to talk about Johnny Depp's divorce.
No,
I really don't see any artistic purpose in exploring that stuff. But I feel like sometime we have to chime in on that. But that is not this show. I was just curious about that movie in particular.
Yeah, I don't,
Did you see it? Did you think it was trash or anything? It was pretty good. It was at least as good as the one that came before.
I saw it, but it's there literally is no consensus, or there's really nothing going on here with the, as I'm kind of quickly scrolling around.
There's no, this is
no, I mean, it's just when you ask, when you look it up, everyone just, talks about Johnny Depp or, Dumbledore's sexuality or Nagini's race. So
yeah, Nagini's Indonesian. She's played by a South Korean in the movie, but surely that's not something we're too concerned about.
No, I mean, I don't.
They tried to get this Indonesian superstar to play that part, but she couldn't do it. She got pregnant. She was gonna, and then they just glommed on to the best actor they could find with the Eastern nationality. Basically, Claudia Kim's really good in it.
Yeah.
And what a weird take on that. You'd think she'd be some reptilian-like character, and she just isn't at all. It's interesting. I don't know where any of that's going, but I was intrigued and fairly diverted by it all. So I was wondering if there was some big deal.
Yeah, this sort of sympathetic character. I mean, it sort of creates a sympathetic character in Nagini, and we're like, dude, Nagini, like, and that, if you look at the Harry Potter movies, and Nagini is,
it's neat. I like little touches like that. I like having my expectations subverted a little bit. Like I said, I didn't love it. I just thought it's pretty good.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. A lot of the big movies that it wasn't like those. I guess that's what I like most about it. Of course, it was something slightly different. Even though it's movie 10 or whatever. Right, big long series that we've all been living with for decades, it still felt different than what they're putting out there to some degree, which I thought was nice.
Yeah.
Even the too many Star Wars movies, like at least when one of those came around, I was like, oh, well, this is a little different. Even though we've had one a year. I mean, it sounds silly, but it's true. It's like, and this list will sort of demonstrate that. But before we and it's not before, it's just part of it, but before we start climbing the mountain of what was the very late 2020 and 2021, I had this little group of movies that I got caught up on that I stuck here at the beginning that don't really have any rhyme or reason.
Yeah,
a couple of them are quite good, and a couple of them are just sort of relatively high profile, but weren't exciting to me, so I didn't get to them. I just kept putting them off. So
right. Yeah, we have a little hodgepodge of movies that are a little bit of prior to 2021. But
I don't think there's anything older than 2019. So it's all.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah,
semi recently, but it's just we called the category we call playing catch up. So
yeah, let's quickly jump into it. Olympic Dreams, Nick Kroll and what's her name? Alexi Pappas.
Yeah.
Yep.
Of course, that's topical because there's another Olympics coming up, probably in a few weeks. We think it's going to happen in some form.
Yeah, it's going to happen. It's yeah. What how is it going to occur?
But the cool thing about Olympic Dreams, of course, came out in 2019. It was shot in and amongst the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, so. It's a really tiny little 2-person sort of intimate story that takes place with this big, massive backdrop where the Olympic Committee just completely cooperated with this tiny little independent film.
Yeah.
And if you know Nick Kroll, it's him, it's Pappas and her husband sort of wrote and directed it.
Yeah.
And they had done a movie together too. And she plays a cross country skier in the film, but she's an athlete in real life. I can't remember what her actual sport is.
Let me see if I can find it here.
If you click on her, she's only been in one other high profile movie, and she plays somebody who plays that sport in it. It was made by all the same people.
You mean Tracktown? Are you talking about Tracktown? Like she's a runner?
Yeah, Tracktown. That's right. Yep. So I really, that's why it's on here, because it's neat. It's really neat that they made it that way, and it's very cool. It's very improvisational. Our characters are really sad. Like her event is extremely early. It's like on like the second day of the Olympics, and she goes out and does a personal best, but still comes in like 17th or something, and is just sort of devastated by it and can't quite get over it. And he plays a volunteer dentist who's on the sort of medical team
in the Olympic Village. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And this is like the first adventurous thing he's ever done in his entire life. He's this very insular and shy guy whose mission is the opposite of hers. He just came to meet people and to, he's treating all these people. Many of them don't speak English. Nick's scenes with the different people that he has appointments with are delightful. The two young South Korean ladies who play his little like receptionists, volunteers out in the hall are delightful and real people. And it's glorious. There's a lot of spontaneity that comes from that. I don't think it's some brilliant movie, but it was unexpected to me, and I waited all this time. Of course, it was shot, and then it came out a couple of years after the Olympics, and now here we are a couple of years later talking about it. But if you like those cute, sort of sweet improv-y comedies, and you want to see one with a rather unique setting, they're both really good actors. I was impressed with both of them. Their issues between each other sort of go round and round in a way that's kind of annoying. That comes from not having a super constructed plan when you go into something, but it's more than made up for by just the weird spontaneity that happens around them, and some really delightful supporting performances that come from a handful of people that aren't even actors, and a handful of people that are actors that you've never heard of and may never hear of again. It was very, very cool. So
excellent.
Nick, to my mind, Nick's the only recognizable face in it, and it's not like he's some big superstar.
Right.
What's he most famous for?
Nick Kroll, he's Nick Kroll show, and he was, he's been on a bunch of stuff, right? He's created Big Mouth on Netflix, and I mean, he was the caveman in the Geico Caveman TV show spinoff that they tried many, many, many years ago.
I like that show. I wish that was still on.
No, Nick Kroll. I mean, Nick Kroll's.
I like the idea of a bunch of metrosexual Neanderthals living in LA. I think that's always been hilarious to me, and I miss it.
Bring
back the caveman, for Christ's sake.
No, I mean, Nick Kroll's just
the gecko isn't funny anymore at all.
Yeah.
He's just, I mean, no offense to him, he's doing his best,
but Dr. Rick, though, Dr. Rick, he's the winner right there.
Oh, what does he do?
He's the guy who tries to he helps people who've become their parents.
Oh, yeah, those are spectacularly good. Yes. Yep. Every time they come on, I sit through them. That lady with the pillows on her couch, man, that is comic gold.
Really, he's terrific. And the guy, the people who they get, I
had no idea those were even for Geico. So the messaging is off somehow, but
it's either Geico or Progressive. I don't know. It's one of those.
I don't know. I've seen them 100 times and I love them, but I'm not connecting with what they're selling, and that's usually a bad sign.
Yep. And
it's like if you're in an 80s band with 3 different lead singers, no one ever really knows who you are. It's just part of the deal.
That's right. Yes, I will say to that.
Speaking of one.
That was
well done. Was that a pun, or did that just happen by accident?
No, that was intentional. I'm gonna feast on that one all day.
Nice.
Being able to pull
Good job.
Yes out at on a Sunday morning. All right. Next up is Wild Mountain Thyme. Spelled THYME.
Like the thing you cook with, or
like the spice? Yeah. The
this is I hated this movie, but I don't. It's not hateable and contemptible per se. It's just it's based on a play, and I bet you the play is really fun because it's John Patrick Shanley, the renowned Irish American New York playwright who is writing this story. It's sort of this frivolous romance that has all this little bit of Irish lore and Irish music in it, and it takes place in Ireland. And I think if you're a New York theater audience and you go and see this sort of potpourri with this sort of fun romantic comedy elements in it, you'd be fairly delighted for an evening. I think that the bad accents and all that stuff, like, it wouldn't bother you. It would all be sort of part of the thing. But in a film, it's just not, it just doesn't work right at all. And it's a shame because it's a very well-meaning piece that wants to entertain people, and most people in Ireland were appalled by it. I didn't have that reaction to it, but I was just like, yeah, this is not very good. It's got Emily Blunt in it.
Yep. Here, let me give the little. I mean, this plot synopsis is a little longer, but the headstrong farmer, Rosemary Muldoon, has her heart set on winning her neighbor Anthony Riley's love. The problem is Anthony, played by Jamie Dornan, seems to have inherited a family curse and remains oblivious to his beautiful admirer. Stung by his father Tony, played by Christopher Walken.
Where did you find this? The back of the video?
No, this is IMDb. This is the only thing, the little synopsis on IMDb. Father Tony plans to sell the family farm to the American nephew, John Hamm. Anthony is jolted into pursuing his dreams in this comedic, moving, and wildly romantic tale.
Wow.
That's literally what was on.
That's really complex. Yeah, it has all that in it, but
yeah, it's all there.
It does. I mean, it does. It has all that in it, but it just I don't know. I was, we were lying obviously at the top of the show. This film has some hot stars in it, but even Jamie Dornan's Irish accent, he's Irish. This doesn't sound right. The whole movie feels like a put on in a way that a movie just, in a way that his play absolutely can, and a movie just can't. And it's just one of those different, it's not that plays if you're going to do a real play, if you're going to do like a Ken Loach play or something, then you got to get the Irish right. But if you're going to do this sort of thing, you know, blah, 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 or you're going to do some old winsome thing about immigrants or something, I mean, there's a lot you can get away with. You get out your tapes, you just sort of do it, you dress the part, and everybody knows it's a put on, and a film just can't work that way. The curse isn't convincing. I didn't understand the squabbles over the land. John Hamm plays a John Hamm type guy who's charming, but it's like going to come in and I like John Hamm a lot, actually, but he's so wasted in this, you know, this movie that lacks the imagination to give him something interesting to do. So they just bring in the obvious guy who can negotiate his way through this mess, which he does. Emily's fine, but the part is terrible. She's wildly inconsistent all over the place, the character. Christopher Walken, again, the Irish accent mate. It's not even that he's doing a bad job. It's just that it lands so wrong coming off out of his mouth. You know what I mean? Yeah. We're so used to what Christopher sounds like that you just.
That's weird that he even did it. I saw him years ago in The Dead on Broadway, and another Irish play, and everybody in that play, had nice thick Irish accents, but not Christopher Walken. He's just doing Christopher. No, and
this would have been better if he would have taken the same.
Yeah,
I mean, you'd have been like, "What, is he even from Ireland?" But but you'd have gotten over that quicker than every time he talks, it just making you flinch. So Wild Mountain Thyme, it's a harmless enough movie. I don't want to turn people off who want a sort of, you know what I mean, who wanted like travel log, like romantic comedy. It is that, but it doesn't land any of that stuff in a meaningful way, which is shameful, because this is the follow-up writing and directing job from this was years ago now, but from Doubt, which is the near perfect script and film, and they can't all be Doubt. You know, John writes from his life, and when he's a hired gun to adapt certain things, he kind of sucks. So I don't want to change him or put him in a different kind of box or anything, but it just wasn't very good. And I mean, his scripts going back, most famously, what's the one, the Moonstruck one for Moonstruck. Yeah, so that's the kind of thing we're talking about, but where it's kind of magic in Moonstruck, here it just all sort of falls flat. That must be the Irish curse. I don't know.
All right. Next up is 7 Days in Entebbe.
The 19th or 20th, adaptation of the 70s hijacking of the was it a French plane?
Air France from Tel Aviv to Paris.
But it's full of Jewish people, and it was hijacked for that reason by Palestinian terrorists at the time. Although the 70s terrorists were a lot fuzzier than the ones we see in films today, in post 9/11 films. I don't know if that. I'm not trying to make light of this this event. It's just been told so many times. What this movie brings to it, though, that's really special is a couple of really good leads, and it's the first film I remember that's told from the hijacker's point of view, almost primarily. That's unique in the telling of it. It's usually about, there's a daring raid and a heroic rescue that happens at the end of this event. Idi Amin gave the terrorists sanctuary to land in, where's he from?
Uganda.
Angola? Uganda, of course. How could I forget? Because I forget everything these days. If it weren't for Joel, the show would just be motor mouth nonsense for 2 hours. You'd have no idea what I was talking about.
Yeah, I think it's
Uganda. Thank you, Joel. Of course, that's where Idi Amin was dictator. And Idi Amin's not a really terrible person, but he's a fascinating person. That's a really fun role for a decent actor to chew on. We saw Forrest Whitaker take it all the way to the podium in Last King of Scotland, and in this film is Nonso. Say his name for me. Nonso. The British actor who plays him in this.
Sorry. I was looking at something.
His name's on the tip of my tongue, but I was about to say it wrong, and I prefer to hear it right.
Why?
If I had it in front of me, I could
come
say
on. Why is he not listed toward the top
Problem.
of here?
Yeah, because they do it all in order of appearance, and he comes into the story relatively late.
And Nonso Ananzi.
Yeah,
Nonso Ananzi. Yep.
Yeah, you'll, if you don't know the name, which you should, but if you don't, you'll, as soon as he hits the screen, you will recognize him. He's a very, very memorable actor who's been in tons of stuff. And the two main characters are, remind me the German actor's name.
We're talking Daniel Brühl.
Yeah, Daniel Brühl, who I love Daniel Brühl. Yeah. I really think he's fantastic. And Rosamund Pike is the other, and she's fantastic as well. So look, it's a rather stolid retelling of this story, but it gets a lot of the details right, and it's not very sensationalistic, which I appreciated. So I learned a lot about it, even though I kind of knew about it and already seen a couple of movies. You know, there's a Charles Bronson movie made of this, and there's just many. It's an interesting story. It was like the big hijacking story of the 70s. And it launched a trend of many, many hijackings after that, which then sort of stopped happening until they were revived in the new century. And it's interesting. What the most interesting thing about it to me, and this will either make you want to go watch it, or this will say, okay, absolutely not, is the moments in it and the bookends of the film are all intercut with modern dance pieces, interpretive dance pieces about the event. And I'm a big fan of modern dance. Believe it or not, it's true. And I mean, I haven't been my whole life.
I gotta mark this so I can pull this out as a sounder.
Well, we always talk about dance sequence, but the dance sequences I like tend to be a little more traditional and just sort of beautiful. Like, I find them to be beautiful moments of visual storytelling. Modern dance is trickier. Frankly, it's easier to make fun of because it tends to be very dramatic, or and lots of heightened movement, and it tends to just sort of wrench the emotion out of whatever its particular concept is. And it's one of those kinds of art where you're not necessarily supposed to get it the way you get a traditional narrative. You're supposed to get something out of it. Yeah. And, I really like that. I like seeing it. I like seeing a really amazing modern dance company. Like, I just like seeing some of their pieces shot with big cinema cameras and stuff. Like, it's a really neat way to watch those. Yeah. And I bought into that, but I can see how it's a weird choice, and I can see how it would be a deal breaker for certain people. So
yeah.
But that to me is what sets this movie apart. Otherwise, it really feels like they traveled back into the 70s with 70s cameras, and they shot a sort of cinema verite, like crime thriller with really good actors. That's good enough to sit down and watch. And if you've never heard of this event, I don't know all the real life details, but this film feels unsensationalistic. It really feels like it kind of nails it.
Sure. And unless you're just it is Charles Bronson free, but
no Charles Bronson coming in at the end. There's
you gotta weigh what you want. Do you want like something a little bit more historically accurate, or do you want your Charles Bronson?
Charles Bronson, other than wearing his shades for the entire Operation Thunderbolt, is what it's called. Spoiler alert: this all happened in real life, so which he probably wouldn't have done. Does a pretty good job playing the Israeli agent that comes in at the end. That is kind of the bold act. I mean, the film eventually calls for a bold action hero to step forward and say, "Yeah, we're just gonna do this.
Yeah.
We're either gonna let this go on forever, or we're gonna do this. And this isn't there's no foolproof way to do it. To go in there with guns and to just take everybody back, there's going to be casualties, and there were innocent ones, and it's not that far off. It was not that bad of an idea back during that, whatever it was. Plus, that movie came out in 1980. It came out like 3 years later. So that's a good one. I can't remember what it's called, but what's our movie we're even talking about called? Not a very good name.
I should have thought this through.
Not 9 Days in Entebbe. It's got a number in it, so that I always forget the number. Something Days in Entebbe.
Charles Bronson, Entebbe movie. Raid on Entebbe is what I have.
What's the one we're talking about called?
Well,
that's on your list that I gave you, so it shouldn't be too hard to find.
Oh, the movie that we're talking about.
Entebbe. You can see that
7 days on, and 7 days in Entebbe is what we're talking about. I'm sorry, I thought you were looking for the name of the Charles Bronson movie.
It's cool that we got them both in there.
There you go.
It's very cool that they both have the word Entebbe in them, which means it'll be easier for you guys out there to find, should you be inclined to watch either of those.
And Raid on Entebbe was a TV movie.
Yeah.
Irvin Kershner did it.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's good. I mean, that's a legit good movie. That's one of those, Brian song. They're this handful of like really good TV movies that, and they're all kind of from that same-ish era that whose legend have grown through time, and this is certainly one of them.
Yaphet Kotto plays Idi Amin in this one, and Peter Finch.
Yaphet Kotto,
Martin Balsam.
Baby. Yeah.
Solid.
Martin Balsam, if he needs some old guy to sit in a room complaining about stuff, he's your man.
He's your man.
Isn't he in Psycho too? Isn't that Martin?
Martin Balsam, best known for is Martin Balsam still alive? It's one of the suggested.
No.
Yes, he was in Psycho. He was also in All the President's Men, 12 Angry
He's the guy,
Men.
we'll just say without trying to spoil Psycho, he's the guy at the top of the stairs in Psycho.
Yeah. In
that amazing take your breath away shot. That's Martin. I thought that was right, but I am not really sure. He's in he's in like St. Elmo's Fire too. I only know all the cheesy movies he's in. He had a really long career full of great stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, All the President's Men, 12 Angry Men, 1,000 Clowns.
12 he was one of the 12 Angry Men, man.
Yeah. Let's see. You scroll through this and it's just like, I mean, if you want TV guest spots, that he was a go-to. St. Elmo's Fire. Boy, Quincy.
I love that scene in St. Elmo's Fire where it's Mayor Winningham's whole family, and you should start a franchise. I felt that sort of. We're way off the plot now. This is when we do a show first thing in the morning, and I get all medicated before we come on the air. You never know. You're going to start talking about films from 2019. You're going to talk about them too much.
Yep.
And eventually you're going to be talking about your favorite, but that everyone else thinks is the lamest scene in St. Elmo's Fire.
There you go. All right. Well, let's move on to the world of science fiction.
Just to finish that thought, I sympathize with her. They all got it put together. Everybody's got a future. Like, to me, that's that movie's meaning in a nutshell. And it sort of loses the plot a little bit with all the soap opera crap going on.
Yeah.
But that moment is like, what are you going to do now? No, it's like that moment it's a really impolite version of that, the scene from The Graduate, well, you can be anything you want.
Yeah.
What are you going to be?
What are you going to be? Plastics.
I love that.
All right. Moving on to the 2019 film, Io.
Oh, yeah. Io, if it wasn't from 2019, it would have gone on my little low fidelity science fiction list, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's got a really awesome poster with Margaret Qualley looking all dramatic and with all these planets and stuff in the background. And I I want to warn you guys out there. If you're not like me and you haven't seen every low budget science fiction movie ever made, or read all these science fiction books, the poster is a lie. It's a lie. Not every time, but you gotta go into these films thinking that the poster is a lie. It's a Roger Corman trick to get you to watch something that was shot for $25, you know, in the New Mexico like desert. It is not. It's a lie. So, okay, that said, there's no big grand space adventure. There's no massive evacuation of Earth. All the things. What's the synopsis for this thing say?
This one I actually had to pull on Wikipedia. The IMDb didn't really have much.
No, but that's what we like. We like it to not have much, so we don't have to listen to a paragraph about it. One sentence is awesome.
Hold on. Yeah, I just remember it, like not even having that. Okay. A young scientist searches for a way to save a dying Earth. She finds a connection with a man who's racing to catch the last shuttle off the planet.
That is pretty much what it's about. She's a scientist. You watch her lifestyle in this sort of Earth is ruined world, and then her isolated life and her frankly sense of false hope about what her mission has been is rattled by the appearance of a stranger played by Anthony Mackie. And Anthony Mackie and Margaret Qualley like are aces, and I'm sure that's probably what draws people to it, thinking, well, they wouldn't be in anything that wasn't super exciting or whatever. But it's not super exciting. It really is a film about environmental and emotional ideas and issues of legacy, and it's not bad, but we're evacuating Earth, the last shuttle off.
It is
the chase. None of that is in this. It's just it's a much quieter, smaller, intimate, and contemplative thing.
It's not we arrive on Io and have to find a way to civilize this savage world.
Like most good cheap science fiction, it has themes and stuff at its core that it's trying to evaluate, and the other stuff is just, if you get a little bit of it, be grateful for it. That's how I would sell it. But I liked Io has a terrible IMDb rating and an awful Netflix rating, and it's because I believe in my heart fully that it is because people were tricked into watching it by a trailer that makes it seem far more exciting than it is, and artwork that sells you this big science fiction movie that it isn't. But as far as small sci-fi stories go, and we'll get to a few in the coming days here, or coming weeks, I guess. It's a decent one, honestly. So
I mean, let's give it up for this IMDb reviewer who's like, it shouldn't earn this amount of bad reviews. It's a quiet movie full of hope. The thing that's wrong is the trailer lured in the wrong audience.
That's right. And they deserve to be punished for that. But it's unfortunate that a bunch of artists who made a thoughtful film got punished for a bunch of marketing people who sold what they wanted instead of what they had, which is a real awful thing. I think it's, although we've seen it time and time again. Well, there's more coming up. We'll talk about the selling of what you wished the studio would have put in front of you instead of what is actually there.
Right.
But watching somebody go around and water plants and stuff for like an hour, for 2 minutes in the trailer, probably would have made it seem kind of
like, come see this movie, Io. Come see this movie.
The trailer is shameful. It really is. It is. I recommend watching it, but I recommend watching it after you watch Io if you're so inclined.
Yeah. All right. Next up is Storm Boy.
Storm Boy. I never saw the original Storm Boy, but Storm Boy is it's like an Australian family classic, and of course it's penetrated in the other former parts of the empire. So the English love it, Canadians really like it, but it never really made its mark in America, like a lot of things of this type.
Yeah.
I wish I could say I've seen it. I've never seen the original Store Boy, which is about a boy who nurses. What are the animals in it? They're the
they are pelicans.
Or,
yep, pelicans.
he nurses a injured pelican back to, or a bunch, and raises a bunch of pelican babies, and then has to teach them how to fly and set them free and stuff. And I mean, it's a beloved family film from the late 70s, early 80s. I can't remember which. This is weird. This is like a sequel because part of it takes place in the present day where Jeffrey Rush plays the kid all grown up. And part of it is a remake because it's him telling the story of this, and they're just going through all the emotions of that again.
Oh yeah.
If you like animals, pelicans are interesting. Australia is interesting. So there's a lot here where you're like, wow, this is sort of a window into something that I haven't really seen before. And I didn't love it because it's a little cloying and everything, but it, compared to something like what we review, what Red Dog, another Australian, compared to that, it's wonderful. Like it's really kind of unimpeachably great because it just doesn't, it's complicated and it doesn't take the easy way out very often, which I really appreciate. And it's pretty. Coastal Australia is lovely, and these animals and the child actor interacting with them, like that's all hard to pull off, and the movie does a good job. But it's still it does sort of. If you've seen Fly Away Home, or if you've seen, there's a handful of sort of subgenre films like this, and if you've seen them, you've kind of seen them all. But every once in a while, I think you're in the mood for that. And Storm Boy is advertised correctly. The poster is this kid hugging a pelican, and that's about the gist of it.
That's gonna be your Storm Boy. Get yourself a Storm Boy. That means you need to get a Mr. Percival, a pelican.
Mr. Percival, right?
Yeah. Next up,
I love the names of the pelicans too.
Yeah,
but the hero pelican is Mr. Percival.
Next up is from 2019, Dreamland.
Ew. Yeah, I just watched Dreamland. Finn Cole and Margot Robbie play. It's hard to explain. You can't really call what they do like a crime spree, but it's sort of a Depression era Badlands sort of Bonnie and Clyde type story.
A teenager's adventures as a bounty hunter take an unexpected twist.
I like that because they've heard of these bank robbers, and him and his neighbor, their childhood friends, decide they're going to be bounty hunters. Partly because they're young and stupid and it sounds exciting, but partly because it's the Depression and everybody really needs the money.
Right.
But one day this incredibly most beautiful woman ever that ever lived shows up in his barn, like injured with a gunshot wound. And it's a reversal of what you normally see, the farm girl nursing the stranger back to health. Yeah. This is the opposite. Margot's great in it. Finn Cole's a good actor, and it's pretty. It's this rustic, dusty, widescreen entertainment, but it really is two people talking in a barn. It is not anybody going on an adventure. That's the bulk of the film, and there is a bank robbery and there's some stuff that happens, but it's not surprising that it had a hot movie star in it. Figuratively now, someone who's basically opening films in an era where that's very, very rare, and rare still for the ladies, and they just couldn't do anything with it. It didn't really have a wide release. It just sort of found a little place to come out on home video and streaming at some point, and it's not a lost gem, I'm sorry to say, but it's still pretty good for what it is. So if you're fans of those folks, you can watch it with a clear conscience. But I've seen it. You've seen it all before. That's movies, right? There's a lot of those movies. Depression era crime romances are really there are a lot of them, and this isn't one of the better ones, unfortunately. Even if it is a halfway decent independent feature.
Yeah. All right, these next two are big. These were big budget, big giant films that were, I guess, trying to have one last ride. First up is Rambo Last Blood.
Oh man,
Last Blood.
We didn't, and we never will. Of course, people who watch the show know that we're all big, huge First Blood fans around here. Joel in particular, but all of us are. Even our extended family, Michael, everybody really loves First Blood. But First Blood's a really, really good film.
Just watched it again over the holidays. It was on TV, and I'm like, I'm yes, it holds up. It's
fantastic. Yeah. I mean, it's a really well shot. Its locale is a huge part of the character of the thing. The Pacific Northwest just comes alive vividly in that film. But we don't want to talk about a great film when we can talk about a really bad one. But look, I will say this. There are 5 Rambo films, and this is the third best one. So it comes in right in the middle of the pack. But it's just that it almost feels like it was written not as a Rambo film, and then they just at some point they plopped Rambo down in it.
Yeah. That tracks.
It's kind of like Die Hard 3. You know, it's good, but it was started out as something different, and then they engineered it to become a Die Hard movie, and you feel that throughout. You can't help but feel it throughout the thing. And this isn't anywhere near as good or entertaining as Die Hard 3, but it does have a siege action scene at the end where all these crime guys who basically kidnap kids and turn them into prostitutes and drug them out and use them and throw them away. They really are the worst people ever. Other than in the first Rambo film, First Blood, all the villains that come later are all just grossly despicable and are doing awful things. Second Rambo film was a big action film. It was a huge hit, even compared to the first one, but it's pretty dumb.
Yeah, it said formula
single-handedly fights the Vietnam War again, and this time he wins. And then the third one, where he's helping out the Taliban take over Afghanistan, is one of the most absurdly stupid action films you'll ever see. But when he was older, Stallone did another Rocky movie, Rocky Balboa, which is really, really good, which sort of gets that movie back to its roots. And he did a Rambo movie, which is called John Rambo. That's the second best one in the series. And that's like a bunch of missionaries in the Far East get kidnapped and are being tortured. And he just goes in there as a one-man army and just wipes out all these rebels and criminals and stuff. And the other 3 movies, even First Blood, which is substantive, are popcorn movies. The Rambo reboot film was just this. It was appallingly violent. He just eviscerates people, and they explode, and they kind of just get their innards all over everything. And I mean, it's hard to explain, but it was just really, really gross. But it was really serious, which was welcome. It's hard to explain. If you're into the carnage, the film at least was serious about it, unlike the third Rambo film and really the second, which were just really corny and ridiculous. This film continues with the seriousness. It's got an amazing siege sequence at the end where Rambo breaks out all the old tools of the trade and takes down this invading army of people. It's far more exciting and believable than the finale of Skyfall, which it resembles very much.
Sure.
It's far better from a choreographed violence way. That end of Skyfall is as ridiculous as the rest of Skyfall. Is physically hardly any of it even makes any sense. So I appreciated that, but the way we had to do to get there and the way we send Rambo out, at least in John Rambo, he was he was on a rescue mission, and yeah, it was gross, and 120 Asian extras and stunt people had to get completely blown away for him to rescue one person. It still was a rescue mission. This is pure revenge. Yeah. Something terrible happens to people he cares about. It's really terrible, and he sends everybody away and sits down in the farm and waits for the army to come. Mm-hmm. And there's something about that that's exciting, because you know you're going to get this incredible action. But
yep,
it's what people said about it. I mean, people who at that point wanted a movie like that got what they wanted, and everyone else were like, why are they still making these? I mean, this will not get you back on Team Rambo, the franchise.
Right.
And it does. I don't think it needed to be as dark as it was to be an effective, violent action thriller either, which it was. But compared to the next movie, it was tonally consistent. It was very serious. Stallone goes through the action bits and the dramatic bits with equal aplomb. You know, there's a vision for what this film was supposed to be that I can, if I didn't enjoy it, I can sort of appreciate it.
My favorite part is when he is sitting on the just sitting on the front deck, and
the rocking chair on
the rocking chair waiting.
So Americana.
And Adele's song from the movie comes up where she's going, "Oh, Rambo, it's Rambo, it's Rambo."
That doesn't happen.
That doesn't happen.
Listen to Joel. He's not even seen it. Why would you sully my Rambo Last Blood review like that? It's a you go home and wait for the bad guys to come. That's how Skyfall ends. It's very, very much the same. There's tunnels, there's these outbuildings, there's a barn, a house, you get the whole shebang. It's really similar. And as I say, it's better. But it's much bloodier too.
Scrolling through some of the stuff on Rambo, I do say, like, one of the things is like, I already clicked past it, but it's like, blah 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 at the national blah 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 said that Rambo's tunnels seemed much more sanitary than the tunnels in Vietnam or whatever. And it was just like, what is happening? That is a fantastic take.
They're in Arizona or whatever, and not in Vietnam. So
I just like that was a take that this reviewer felt necessary to put it. Well, at least those tunnels, man. He clearly, those are some good tunnels.
Until they weren't.
Yeah, you could eat off those tunnels.
Yeah, you can't anymore.
Yeah.
Unless you're a cannibal. There
you go.
You can't anymore. Those tunnels get the full show, basically. Why they follow him down into the tunnels, I have no idea. But the tunnels are, there's other places too, but the tunnels are where the fun happens, man. The amount of booby traps in that tunnels waiting for those slave monger guys from Mexico,
Yep.
There's a couple of nice Mexican characters in it too.
Yeah. Yeah. And
just a couple. But there's a couple. They got a couple in there, and I appreciate the effort.
Yep. Next up is Bad Boys for Life.
Have you seen the Bad Boys movies, Joe?
I saw the first one.
That wasn't very good. It certainly didn't deserve a sequel that was bad, and this is even worse. This is bad. Although I'll say this for it, because it's Michael Bay, right? Even the lamest like establishing shot or second unit shot is gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's for a dumb action comedy. It's really, really well lit and shot. But so are the Transformers movies. And how on earth did you show up to the third Transformer movie? Okay, the first, who knows? It could be good, right? I went to that stupid movie. The second, you should know better, but who knows? Maybe now that they've established the Transformers, they'll just hit the ground running and tell a decent story. Well, they didn't. It's terrible. It's worse, 10 times worse than the first one, which was the worst action movie of the previous year. So when you're sitting in Transformers 3, you got to ask yourself, why am I here?
Yep. What happened? What happened
what's
in my
wrong
life?
with me?
Yeah.
I mean,
What
really
happened in my life
ask yourself
where I
the
went?
tough questions.
Yep.
Why are you here? And if the answer has something to do with you like to, quote, turn your brain off, I invite you to turn off the movie show with Joel and Ryan as well. And believe me, we need all the viewers we can get.
Yeah,
but
we love having you here, but we're gonna challenge you.
Nobody wants to turn their brain off that much to enjoy a third Transformers movie.
I understand that's not turning your brain off. That's taking your brain out, putting it in a jar, tucking it into a nice, cool, dark place, and somehow making it to the movie theater, and then go. Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing, but in Roger Ebert's review of Event Horizon, he said, you could go to Event Horizon. You could also put a metal bucket over your head and have your friend hit it with a stick for 2 hours.
Yep. That's pretty great.
So
Bad Boys for Life.
That bad, but that's a fantastic diss on a movie. You know, he had the words when he wanted to use them. It's just so stupid, you guys. Is this what we want? I don't, there are some critically acclaimed and highly celebrated films coming up that are just as stupid. Okay, so maybe not in this show, we won't get to them, but it is stunning how and it's partly it's culturally, I'll admit, that I don't really get it. I think if you grow up watching Tyler Perry sitcoms and stuff, you get used to that there's a physical gag followed by a bunch of jokey comedy followed by an extremely overwrought, touching, huggy moment. And you're kind of going along for the ride with all that. And because each of them has their own value in their own way, you don't really mind that they're all crammed together in this weird, inconsistent sandwich of a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm averse to that. So, because nothing worse than, getting jerked around by something constantly. This movie ends with everybody crying, and it's just, you're like, you in no way earned anything. You've had 3 movies to get here to the end, and you didn't do it. And then to make matters worse, you had one of the worst, weird post-credit scenes I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
Ever. Where you're like, well, maybe there's going to be more Bad Boys, and it's just like, I certainly hope not,
Yeah, there's nothing in here except a blank IMDb credit saying that they're Michael Bay.
There's some other one it planned. Yeah,
Michael Bay is slated to do a 4th.
Will Smith, very famously, he didn't do the Suicide Squad sequel, which he could have used on his resume. He suffered through the first Suicide Squad movie, so why the hell didn't he do the one that seemed, at least on the page, like it was going to be fun? Right. I have no idea. He didn't do the Independence Day sequel. Now, that turned out pretty bad, actually, but it's still way better than this, and way better than Bad Boys 2, frankly. So no sequels except this crap. I just don't understand it. Maybe it's him and Martin Lawrence. They have an undeniable chemistry together. That's fun. A buddy cop movie, the more you do them, the more that lived in bro sort of friendship that's in this, to be fair. It's not a total waste of time.
Something like that probably does appeal to Will Smith. I mean, he did the number of Men in Black movies that he did. He clearly, it's so clearly it's that
I forgot about that.
2 guys, of different, 2 different types of guys, but they're coming together, and probably he's just, it was a chance to get together and work again with his friend Martin Lawrence. So it's like, okay. Yeah. So,
it's just too all over the place for me. If they wanted to make a crime story with some laughs, they could have. If they wanted to make a comedy, then they needed to take the foot off the crime pedal just a little bit and have few less headshots to people, a few less people getting run over by cars, and you might add something. To me, this film, and where it ends up, it's just in real life, it's not real life. It's total fantasy. So I don't mean to equate, but you just can't get there. You can't juggle all these things. It's impossible.
Mhm.
And even in a dumb film, it doesn't feel right when they try. Everything about Rambo Last Blood feels right, even though it's dark and incredibly ugly. Like, as far as let's end this with something else, it does the job. This film is just like more noise, more nonsense, all in the service of nothing that you can really look back and say, well, what was good about this? What was the story about? Why did this happen? Like I say, the chemistry between the two are pretty good. They have a young team of whippersnappers that they work with too, that are populated with some interesting actors that are really welcome when they show up. It's really the best line in the whole thing, because they keep appearing. They're cops and they can't be doing what the bad boys are doing because they've gone off on a bad boy mission. But they keep appearing to sort of save the day, which is fun. And at the end, when they appear for the final sort of showdown, and they show up and they start unpacking all their little high-tech cop crap, Martin's standing by the door and he says, I just feel better when they're here. And that was neat, so it's not terrible, but it just is terrible. The people you have working on this, even Michael Bay himself, it's like anyone who can shoot this guy talking on his cell phone like this and have it just be perfection visually, just do something that means something, man. He did do to his credit, he did the Benghazi movie, which is pretty good, but I don't know. I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm beating a dead horse, man, but Michael Bay is never going to do anything. That's a ship has sailed, but it frustrates me. Because even the third Lethal Weapon film, which is equally bad in all the same ways, got you through from beginning to end. It worked. It was over, and you're like, well, well, actually, the third one's pretty good. It's the fourth one.
Right.
It's the fourth one I'm thinking of. God, there were 4 of those things, and they're doing another one.
And they're
Mel
doing
Gibson's
another one.
it.
There you go. Thank you, unnecessary world. So that does it.
I'm getting too oldest for this shit. Isn't that what they did the last time the Who went on tour? They were like, hope I die before I get oldest. You guys are super old.
Yep. Yeah, hope I die before I get old.
We'll be joining you shortly.
Yep.
We're making fun of you while we can.
Yep.
All it is.
All right. So that is prior to 2021. So now, thank you for sticking with us, dear listener. Now we're actually going to get in to 2021 and the films that especially Ryan.
Speaking of Tyler Perry sitcoms, we're gonna just totally whip you around here.
Yep.
In a completely different direction.
Yep. And we're gonna start our talking of 2021 with my little contribution to the effort, the top documentaries that I saw this year. Now, I didn't see every documentary that came up this year. There are some that look really, really interesting that I did not get to. But these,
you want to play the countdown theme for the documentaries?
Oh, hey, that's
a good
form. Yeah,
just for fun.
Just for fun.
Do it.
Where's my countdown? And boom!
Woo!
9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Did you see the new intro?
Yeah.
That video?
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, just add a little space.
Yeah, a couple more explosions in it.
Yeah, I just wanted to have a big fireball explosion.
Yeah. I think our old rustic, like painted tent logo doesn't really lend itself to the sort of modern graphic design that you can do in but whatever, that's cool. It takes all kinds. So that's the only thing I thought, oh, look, that little that little old timey fun time ice cream parlor logo of ours is like it's in space now, and now look, it's over here. And
after 5 years, we're flying through space.
So I thought that was funny, but no, I love it. You know, if you're gonna do cheesy graphic art, the cheesier the better, and that was super fun. And I have to say, the one particular explosion was very well timed. I was impressed.
Thanks.
No, you got to get it in the bucket if you really want it to work. Some people just put an explosion in there, put one here, put one there.
If we were in a different world and had a lot of time, I would just want to shoot the two of us just walking towards camera, so that I could just
like the Reservoir Dogs.
So that I could have us walking away from the explosion. And have. But someday maybe. All right, so the someday my top documentaries, like I said, I didn't see everything, but these were 6 of them that I really dug, and
really, as talked about films, a couple of them anyway, as there were this year, so they were certainly worth bringing up.
First one was the Sparks brothers. Now I didn't know Sparks, I didn't know Half Nelson. But these guys are, this is an Edgar Wright documentary. It's the story of these two brothers who they're like they're every band's favorite band.
That's what they say about them, right? They're not your favorite band. They're your favorite band's favorite band.
Yeah. And
that's a clever thing, but that's not exactly true. They're weird. Have always been weird and avant-garde, and yet yet one song at a time, you don't really get the weirdness so much. Maybe a little bit, maybe a little taste of it. Yeah. But they're it's hard to explain. It's really hard to explain what the Sparks is, which is why a documentary about them really is super exciting.
Yeah.
And two brothers who came up in the sort of mid 70s, basically glam rock scene, but they didn't really conform to glam rock. They didn't really conform to new wave. They fit in for a time, but they didn't really conform to it. They were always sort of commenting on it, the things that were going on in the world in these sort of clever ways. Their biggest hit, and their really only hit in America, and it wasn't even really much of a hit, was it's on the tip of my tongue. It's a great song. I'm not remembering. Sorry. It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't remember. It's a really funny play on words. It's like a 2.5 minute song, and it's really, really fun. It came out in the early 80s. Before
Cool Places?
No,
that's not it. What's their number one? Oh, that's this person's number one list.
He did his favorite Sparks songs. They had a minor hit too with Jane Wiedlin of the Go-Go's too, and
that's
but that's remembered for being her mostly. I Predict is the name of the song that I'm thinking of. Oh my God.
Wow. Ooh, that's a lot of,
I Predict. It's very clever. This song will fade out. The song will fade out. The song will fade out. I predict. And of course the song doesn't fade out. It just ends abruptly. So it's a very, very clever song. It's a good place to start with them. It's very catchy and fun, but it doesn't tell the story. The Sparks are an amazing band. I know them very, very well. So for me, it was fun to hear that Edgar was doing a doc about them, but Joel, you didn't know them. Most people won't. Nope. What's the value of that documentary more than anything? It just captures their weird personality.
It captures their weird personality. It captures that era. And also, like they said, it's your favorite band's favorite band. It's, you see the maybe not a little bit musically the influence that they had, but more so the stagecraft, more so you really see, you see where Flea and Anthony Curtis of Red Hot Chili Peppers, you know, that you sort of you can draw a direct line, like, oh, that's something that they got from
Sure.
Sparks. And you know, and you know, like, and just listening to these other musicians, and you know, and people talk about these guys, and sort of the can you believe it? It's almost reverence, but it's sort of tongue-in-cheek reverence. It's just like, what, huh? It's because you know, so they're like, there's an element of it to me that I felt like, this shouldn't work, but it does, and it does really, really well. So that's, you know, that to me, that's why, you know, that's what I found so fascinating. And also from somebody, you know, I'm not as evidenced by the you know, your background, which is just your wall. You know, I don't have, I consider myself music knowledgeable, but not as steeped in there, but just having never heard of, like, somehow this was, it was hidden in, I like, because I like a lot, you know, I like the Go-Go's, I like Weird Al Yankovic, I like, you know, you know, the Chili Peppers, and, you know, these Franz Ferdinand, I like Franz Ferdinand, they're great, they're a cool band. And and it's like it's like, how did I miss this? How did I, like, literally have a complete blind spot on it?
They've been there the whole time, virtually our whole lives.
Yeah, and that's what,
and it is weird
blew me
that
away. That's what the
the
documentary,
reality of that is, that's true of so many bands that are out there. And the only thing that makes it so, sometimes it's not usually because they're failures, because you know, you can pile all the failed musical projects from here to the moon and back. When one is successful to the degree that they are and have had the longevity that they've had, the reason you haven't heard of them is because they're from someplace else. They're not Americans, basically. That's not to say that British bands don't do well here, but they, even the best of those, have a hard time. You know what I mean? ABBA had something like 29, 30 something hits over 5 or 6 albums. And here they had 7. And we think of them rather iconically. And now, thanks to Mamma Mia, and just thanks to the 90s disco revival and stuff, like, we know these songs and we think of them as hits, but we didn't know them when they were new, you know, a lot of them and stuff. It's Sparks is like that. It's, wow, if you just dig a little deeper, you hear all this stuff. There are entire bands like that who had lives and big, huge hit records and lots of things, you know, in the charts and lots of videos and stuff. And they just, because they never hit, because that first song that was such a hit in Germany didn't hit here, they were moved on from very, very quickly. And that's part of Sparks' story too, is that they got record deals here in America, so their fans could buy their stuff. But radio, MTV of all people, they were tailor made for MTV, and yet you never really saw them on that. And even now, later, you don't really see them on it. But it's a new era. You can go to Spotify and just say play Sparks, and there they are, like they've been there the whole time.
Which is pretty much what I did after seeing the documentary months ago.
That's neat. They have those two guys wrote a musical too that we're going to talk about later in our in review. One of the big musical releases of this year, and it's fascinating. So Sparks will come up again soon.
All right, my next one that I really dug is called, and actually I did find out this was from 2020. I did not know that. I thought it was a 2021 release. But it's Mlk Fbi, and it's you know, there's not a lot new in this, like from a general standpoint, when you talk about the FBI's obsession and their idea of taking down, you know, we got to take down and discredit Martin Luther King. he's getting too uppity, for to use a bad term. But the value of MLK FBI and these documents that were now available is just seeing it in black and white, seeing it, it just so clearly put out, and the fear that they had, that the FBI had, that J. Edgar Hoover had, the fear, and Lyndon Johnson, the fear of this man who who just could rally people with his words, and the lengths that they went to try to discredit him and to embarrass him and to make him go away. Especially, Martin Luther King, not a perfect man, had some what is the word? He had some just intimate discussions.
He had some weak spots that they could attack, basically.
And so the things that they went to. So, I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be like a Martin Luther King expert or anything like that, but I've seen a lot. I've read, Martin Luther King as a person, Martin Luther King as a character, has been someone who's pretty familiar with, and this time in history. But again, it's seeing everything just like. These guys just wrote it down,
right?
We got, and just
without thinking about it, said it out loud, said it, and were just vehemently going after him every way they possibly could for things that they had that they thought might stick, for things they just made up, for whatever. They just were going. In a time when there was a lot happening in America, and a healthy, productive FBI would have been useful.
Right.
They were going after, and you see a little bit of this in Joel's favorite movie of last year, the Judas and the Black Messiah.
Yeah. It's a real, it's a great, Judas and the Black Messiah, J. Edgar Hoover's in that as well, played by Martin Sheen, and it's that same sort of thing. It's like the racism is just there. It's just and it's we.
That's not even the story. This, because that's the story is what you really see is that the people who are in charge, the people that have some authority, the people that have the power of being able to arrest you and charge you and stuff, they're weird, obsessive terror at the idea of these people
just being people.
What?
Yeah.
Well, more than that. Yeah. I mean, they were catalysts for a better world.
Right.
And we can see that fairly clearly now with the benefit of history, but they're just their fear and their never give up attacks on them. It is harrowing to see. Yeah. And to see the thing that this doc does is that it's really more about that. That really is what it's about. It's about that.
It's that
process and all the different ideas that they had and all the different ways they tried to bring him down.
The lengths they went to, the absolute lengths that they went to, the amount of energy spent trying to come up with weird creative plans to take him down. If that energy was spent on anything else, who knows what could have been accomplished. My next documentary, LFG, which stands for Let's Effing Go. It's a documentary.
Effing technically start with I'm sorry, you were just censoring yourself.
I was censoring myself so I didn't have to put in a beep later.
Continue.
Oh, here, hold on. Maybe I can do it this way. I can go. It stands for.
I don't want to put a beep in either. So
I thought I had it stands for Let's Go. And And it's the story of the U.S. women's soccer team and their fight for an equal contract with the men. Obviously, the U.S. women's soccer team, the most successful international soccer team in the women's
national
game.
soccer team here in the U.S., but I just
and our men's team very much not so, and yet the men get paid significantly more, their appearance, so it's that look at equality. Now this is this a great documentary? No. Does it really get into the details of the lawsuit that the team is trying to, on the eve of the World Cup, they file a lawsuit against US soccer, and to really capitalize on the media exposure? Does it really get into what's really the meat of what's in that lawsuit? Not really. No. This is an appeal to emotion documentary. This is to make you realize the amount of work, the sacrifice, that these women go through and these women's families go through so that they can continue to to try to chase their dreams. And it's so it's in some ways it's sort of an advertisement for the lawsuit, less than it is a real in-depth look at it. But as a fan of the sport, as a fan of the team and many of the players, it's just an undeniable look at these amazing athletes, and tracing it all the way back to Title IX, and the creation of Title IX helped build this program that is now not just it's still the dominant they're still the dominant team in the women's game, but they're also a huge inspiration to leagues around the world and nations around the world who are starting to take the women's game more seriously and invest in it. I really loved it. It was one of those things I watched and it was just like, I just put it into my veins. I could watch these clips, these highlights, these women train. I could watch that all day. So I dug that one.
Very cool.
Yep. And next one is the most talked about documentary of the year. Maybe the most highly anticipated documentary that anyone has ever made. It is The Beatles Get Back. Peter Jackson,
yeah.
Very, very long but fascinating look at the Beatles putting to trying to record their
really long.
Yeah, really long.
Well, I think they, in his defense, because every Peter Jackson thing is too long, but and this is no exception. But I think I think if you're a big time Beatles fan, or if you're just a baby boomer who wants to sort of call back to this era, or if you're a big music fan and wants to see how some of the greatest of all time sort of work together, I think they kind of. This footage has just been sitting around all this time. We've seen little wild, bits and pieces of it through the year, but it covered the whole making of the entire Let It Be album.
Yep.
Which was the final Beatles album released, but it was the penultimate Beatles album recorded. Mm-hmm. It was a one-off project that they really could, unlike a proper studio album of theirs, you really could send in a crew and capture the whole thing the way they planned on whipping it together.
Yeah.
And I think you just couldn't believe what they had. I mean,
it's
right?
wild.
It feels like this just keeps going because there's just more of this somehow. I mean, it's all here, and and there are moments of it that are revelatory. I'll let you get back to it. I'm sorry, but I didn't even watch the whole thing. But the when you see the relationships at the end of the band when they're in each other's presence. One thing that's shocking, because they have their differences and you're really starting to see those come into focus, but they're so respectful of each other, which is not, I think, what people expected to see.
Right.
Even, you know, when they stopped doing that was when they were business partners together after the band had broken up and they were not in each other's presence. They became very sort of publicly disrespectful of each other, which was a shame. But that's how all divorces tend and all breakups tend to go.
Right. You know, to me, the big, you know, the big overarching thing of this whole thing was to see how rudderless they were once Brian Epstein died. And how, you know, he clearly, how much of these four guys absolutely relied on him to keep the ship of, you know, to keep everybody to clear, you know, clearly Epstein was a brilliant manager. He knew exactly how to talk to each one of these guys to get the best out of them, and to work with each other. And when he died, there literally was this vacuum, and Paul, trying to just be the good guy, gave it a go, tried to come in, and boy, you just, you know, you see moments of magic, and then you see moments where the other guys are just like, no, what are you doing? This is no.
Paul McCartney's legacy has really done wonders by this, because he's the only guy in the room that has any perspective of what's going on around him in the moment. But more than that, I think, you know, John Lennon was an activist and was all these things that McCartney didn't really seem like he was throughout the years. And John Lennon was taken from us, so he's been sainted. Yeah. And McCartney lived to give my regards to Broad Street and some music people weren't as thrilled about. And it's like, as a result, the incredible musical magic that is Paul McCartney's been, for whatever reason, just been denied. There's people out there, you know, like there's people, of course, these are media people who are idiots, but there's people out there doing interviews who think that, you know, who think that John Lennon wrote Yesterday and stuff. Like, they just don't really get who did what and what it is. You can tell by hearing it if you know anything about music. You can really tell one stanza at a time. Hard to tell in the very early years, but by this point, it is obvious what is a Paul McCartney song, what's a, even though they're credited together on all of them. Watching Paul McCartney, the true magical moment in it, watching him create Get Back, an all-time great rock and roll single, from scratch. It's just it's this eye-opening, shocking, amazing thing. I was, and I think, you can see that separate of the rest of it. I think if you want to see Get Back, the song being created, look that clip up, because it just it's incredible. It's incredible witness to the creative process of a guy who's just in the moment, because the documentary does another miraculous thing. It takes these legends on these album covers and it just puts them in this very human place. Where they're just people and you can relate to them as that. But then you see somebody just pull musical magic and musical history out of the air above them in the studio.
And these great moments where, like, even after, you know, the years spent together and all that, you know, it's like you said, you know, there's a difference between a Lennon song and a McCartney song, but to watch, like, when, you know, when McCartney's coming up with, you know, when he's come up with a lick, when he's come up with something, and you see and he's, you know, he may be over there working, you know, maybe on the, you know, McCartney's working on the piano or something, and the other guys are kind of goofing around or whatever. And then there's this moment where they kind of he hits on something, and you literally, like, a bunch of, like, I don't know, you just suddenly see the guys just like, and they kind of gather up their guitars, or Ringo is like, oh yeah, here, let me get my sticks, and all of a sudden there's just like this oh yeah, and you know, they have that unspoken shorthand, and there's like and they're like, and they know exactly what they're supposed to do. Those moments were so exciting. And in addition to that, then you also had this whole thing about the business side of the Beatles and of this album of, well, we have this album. What is our big thing that we're going to do? And the ongoing discussions that lead to the rooftop concert. But all of the giant boat that they're gonna do, that they, we're gonna pack a bunch of Middle Eastern people onto or we're gonna do it at the Acropolis, and and they're like, can we really do that? Yeah,
they could have done anything they wanted. They don't seem to fully believe it themselves, but they could have done anything they wanted at that point. By 1968, I mean, they could have done anything they wanted, truly.
And I'm sorry, I'm kicking myself here for not Billy Preston.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
And the little moments where you see there's a few times where this happens. It happens especially on Get Back, the song Get Back, but they're like, you can see the four guys and they have this song. They have this song kind of done, and there's like, and you just can tell, like, they show them back in the recording in the booth, listening back to it, and they're just like, I don't, maybe you would, and they're like, I don't, you can tell that they know that something's missing, and then Billy Preston comes in, who's just recording something, down the street, and comes by to say hi to his friends, and they're like, hey, you want to hear what we're working on? Maybe throw something down. And he's like, boom. And then all of a sudden, Billy Preston just like a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And he's just like, and it's just, and you see the four guys just light up. And so that idea that Billy Preston was the fifth Beatle, he certainly is on Get Back.
Yep. Yeah. Well, on those songs, he's the only other guy credited. He's the only other musician credited alongside them on a couple of tunes.
Yeah. So,
and his contribution to those songs are significant. The other moment I'll talk about, we got to move on from this one, but because you could talk all of it, but I loved watching them fight.
Yes.
Over the two of us throughout the whole documentary, and then by the time they've recorded it and they're playing it back, George Harrison, who hated it the most, says, well, it really is lovely that well, there it is. You got there somehow, and it's neat. It's neat. From a musical standpoint, it's a treasure, but it really is a human story. It really brings these guys who are, they're otherworldly, like celebrity figures. It really brings them down, and you see them in their element, which is magical, but you really do see them as the people struggling to just do the next thing, and under a tremendous amount of pressure to deliver every time, which it's really cool. It's a really cool project, but it is super long. I strongly suggest to Get Back. Paul McCartney writes Get Back. That's all. You should Google that. You should take you right to it.
That whole that sequence is
it's incredible.
It's pretty electric. My favorite documentary, this isn't the number one documentary of the year, but my personal favorite, the one that I got resonated with me the most, that I had maybe the most fun watching this past year, was another music documentary called Tina, about Tina Turner. And as a child of the 80s and 90s, Tina Turner for me she was Private Dancer, she was What's Love Got to Do with It, she was Thunderdome, and yet I knew of Proud Mary. I knew of it, but I didn't know of the whole Ike and Tina years, and everything going on.
Even from the Angela Bassett movie, you didn't learn all of it?
Well, sure. I mean, that was like, but when that movie, when What's Love Got to Do with It, was that came out in 90,
5-ish, 7-ish.
So
like
so I mean, we were in college.
That's still way later, but that's where I learned about all that.
Yeah, that's where I learned about it. But I guess, but musically, the music of Ike and Tina Turner, I think maybe, and the stage.
Well, it's lost
presence.
The music and the miraculousness of the music is lost due to the trauma involved in the relationship.
Yeah.
So
and the way she talks about it is pretty unflinching. It really is. God, I just watched it going, man, this woman, and the fact that she, when Ike and Tina, when she split and she's trying to figure out how to move on and how to start. And she was like, I never wanted to be like an R&B soul singer. I wanted to be a rock star. And I'm starting a rock band. And that, to me, that whole section, that sort of the reinvention of her, of herself leading up to, what eventually became Private Dancer and all of that stuff, was to me, those clips of her playing, whether it's at CBGB's or some of the other clubs that she would be playing at, trying to create this rock show. I'm like, that was just tremendous. And also to sort of see her, how fondly she looks back at that time and that struggle, knowing that she came out on the other side of it and what she was able to create. She knew that she was, in uncharted waters, and it was just super exciting. So the Tina,
there's very few artists out there deserved a big second act more than she did, and she kind of nailed it.
Yeah, and it's not like I was a huge Tina Turner fan. She was just ubiquitous. She was, What's Love Got to Do with a huge hit. I
always knew that there was a comeback aspect to that album, and her whole 80s revival, but it always felt like, well, you're just a 60s, early 70s star who just had a comeback. A lot of people did. Steve Winwood did. There's a list just as long as my arm of people of that age that suddenly in the 80s were making albums that everybody was buying again. But when you learn more about it, obviously it really is remarkable. And not just for the more salacious reasons. It's what Joel's talking about, to really get out there and redefine yourself, to have a vision for what you wanted your music to be, even though you had all these collaborators helping you create it. Her idea of what she wanted to sound like and what she wanted to present herself to the world as it was not a greatest hit show. It was not a revival of the old personality. It was a totally different. Private Dancer is, it's like a lot of that big mega albums of that day that have, 4 or 5 hits on it. It's got 3 or 4 different producers. Like, it's a big album. But it was a modern album, in every sense of the word. It sounded like the moment it came out. And that was cool and brave and really, really neat. So and I think being a young man at the time, it was more, it was like, oh yeah, she's the woman with the giant hair. And she wins for biggest hair, and that's a big award to win in 1984. While that one was my favorite, the best documentary though that I think there was of 2021 was Summer of Soul, or When the Revolution Could Not Be Televised. Again, another music documentary, but having to do with it's again one of these things where this footage has been sitting in a pile for for years. It's the story of the Harlem Cultural Festival that used to happen in the 60s, and of several days of music and art and everything, and this was in 69, and 69 was, the lineup was Stevie Wonder, Mahalia Jackson, Nina Simone, The Fifth Dimension, Staple Singers, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Blinky Williams, Sly and the Family Stone, the Chambers Brothers. So it's like these absolute titans of music that were playing, and it was
these performances recorded, played on like a 2-hour special on CBS, and then the footage just went away, and it was all this amazing, and the document, so it's the director Questlove, and I can never remember Questlove's. It's Amir something. I can never remember his last name. Oh, it's Amir Thompson. How can I can't remember Thompson, but it's Questlove. Questlove over the Roots.
Mm-hmm.
And he directed. He was like, I can get this made. I know how to do this, and it is a really good documentary. It's a little slow moving, in parts. And it's really exciting, but I think there's an element of, because this is a cultural festival and there's a lot more going on than just these music these music acts. There are times where they're talking about the cultural festival where it's just like, I think I just, my expectations of it were, it's just going to be like these. It's almost going to be like the Woodstock film, where it's just like
right.
performance after performance after performance. And there's a lot of discussion about the performances. And frankly, some of the discussions of the performances get in the way of the performances. Like they cut away from the performance to talk about the performance. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, I wanted to just see that. I wanted to see
that's
that.
The lesson of the Get Back documentary is you can almost have as much as you want, as long as it's the thing itself. Now, although you mentioned that Tina really is a person looking back deliberately on an era in time, that's a powerful tool as well. But I know what you're talking about with that. And you've got it. We can feel it. You don't need to explain it to us. And that doc, it's really its only flaw.
It really is
considered one of the best films of the year. But it really does take you away from right where you want to be, to rather needlessly have people tell you what you were already thinking and feeling when you were wrapped up in it yourself. So
right. And so that because there are times where it's like you could still talk about the performance, but just let us see it in its entirety. It's like I kept thinking like of That Thing You Do. One of the brilliances of That Thing You Do is you only ever hear the song in its entirety one time. And you have these little cuts. And it was like, in this case, because of the acts that you had, because of the performances and stuff, it was like, no, we want the entire thing. And then you can talk to us about it. But let us just take it in and watch this Stevie Wonder performance. Let us watch The Fifth Dimension.
That probably should have been the project. They probably should have restored the whole damn thing if they could have. Maybe money, time, the elements. I don't know. Maybe there were factors that prevented that. But that, to me, that's what it should have been. And then you bet, have an Outside Voices documentary that's released right alongside it, where you go through, and then you don't have to show us anything. You only got to show us enough, like in That Thing You Do. You only got to show us enough for us to know what you're talking about.
References,
exactly. And then you could have had both. You could have had that all.
But it's like, that's just something that kept, like, made it hard. It's like, I feel like it was a missed opportunity in points to do that. But
it's despite that criticism, it's
and that's
taken the
a
world
pretty
by
small thing.
Anyone who's seen it, well, it is. It's a little thing, but you're right about it. I think.
Yeah. But it's still. I mean, it's this thing that the vast majority of us, especially who are not Black and African American, have never heard of.
Yep.
And it's just this really amazing event, and that
it's the exact same time period as Get Back. It's a same time period as MLK. We're not quite exactly the same, but it's this time in America's history where the turbulence was setting in. You know what I mean? Because the things that were meaningful and the things that were painful about being an American were finally being addressed in ways that they hadn't been before. So it's such a time that that's alive and amazing. And so anytime you can capture something like that, and you do just feel it, even through the music.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm one who likes his music without all the visual aids, honestly. But these are different. This really there's a reason for you to see into the past, because they're more than the music, I guess is what I'm saying.
It's a tremendous project. It's a very, very good documentary, and absolutely worth seeing. It's certainly not Get Back long, but it's only 2 hours. It's a 2-hour documentary,
Right.
which can be long for a documentary, but it's
2 hours good. It's a movie length documentary, feature length
documentary. It is. It's really good.
The style they did it couldn't have been much longer, but right. Like you say, it could have been infinitely long. It's interesting enough that they could have shown the whole thing, and it would have been great.
Yeah. So that's it. That's my those are my top documentaries of the year. I really dug them. On-air production meeting. Do we call it here, or do we continue?
We got to do these last couple. It's an honor to be nominated movies. I'm not going to talk much about them because so I get what you're saying. We're running out of time, and we should devote more time to these than we did to Rambo Last Blood, and we're not going to. But whatever. We're going to end on a high note with the fellow nominees from the Oscars from last year, so that we can be all caught up and really dive into Hollywood proper next week.
Great. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 films here.
And you can actually leave off the last one.
Okay. But we're going to start off with White Tiger.
The Western, you can leave that one off. We don't need to talk about that now, but I think these others we do, so let's do it.
We're going to talk about White Tiger first.
Got to go back to synopsises for this, because especially this needs a sort of
White
setup,
Tiger.
I think.
Let me find the good one. For some reason, I put the wrong link in here. Give me a moment. This is why I shouldn't do my links late at night. An ambitious Indian driver uses his wit and cunning to escape from poverty and rise to the top. An epic journey based on the New York Times bestseller.
It's an English language film that has a tremendous amount of Indian in it. I'm not sure what the language that this particular group of people speaks. There's a couple of them over there, but it's sold as sort of a zany comedy, and it does have its zany, weird aspects to it. But it really is a rather, in the end, it's a rather dark tale, kind of along the lines of what was the Korean movie that just won Best Picture?
Parasite?
It's not quite absurdist like Parasite really is, but it has that dark core of a thing at it. So while the comedy works, you're always a little, on edge over what's going on, because it always feels like there's some, like that this class system breeds resentment, and it breeds this sort of dark backlash that's always could come out at any time. And I was really surprised by that, because if you look at the poster for White Tiger, it was nominated for Best Screenplay, Adapted Screenplay. I think that might be it, but maybe a couple other scattered noms in there too. It has a very vivid sense of geography and place. It's it's an incredible look into a different culture, but it's that darkness that surprised me, and the fact that the movie ends, it has what feels almost like a traditional ending that's been built upon anger and hate and crime, and it just I was surprised very pleasantly by it, but I just want people to be warned. It's another movie where they really sell the comedy in the ads. As I say, the poster really looks like this is a goofy, fun, ethnic
bright
comedy.
Aqua green with a funny drawn crown. Yeah.
it's a crime drama. Be warned up front that that's what it is. It's important that you know that. But that's a really, really good movie. I still am processing it because it was one of those things that swept me away, and I wasn't really able to be super analytical when I was watching the thing. But that's good. That's good.
Cool.
That's a good accomplishment by it that I wasn't able to do that because that meant I was really wrapped up in it emotionally, which is cool.
Sure. That's great.
Yep.
All right. Next up is the United States versus Billie Holiday.
Oh yeah, this was good too. Another movie where the feds are coming after somebody with her, it was a one trick. I mean, Billie Holiday was hardly a one-trick pony. But the reason that the authorities hated her was she kept singing this song about lynching. And she just refused to let it slip out of her set lists. It was very upsetting to people, obviously. But even though she was just a musician, and the film is very biopic-y, it covers her issues with drugs, her various relationships. It really puts a really grounded spin on somebody whose life and music is legendary and larger than life. But the central part of it is, like the name implies, it's about the way they came after her. They came after her for a drug habit, but they didn't care which black celebrities were doing drugs then. They really didn't care about that. They wanted her to stop singing this song and the same, Joel was just talking about it, the power of the song, where in this case, you hear about the song and you hear about it, and then boom, it's in the movie, and you don't even know what's happening because the song sneaks up on you. It did in her concert. Like, this song's about a lynching. This is terrifying, and yet it's a remarkable piece of music. It's a harrowing film. She just went through so much, and it's depressing almost. The movie, which is a bummer, but that makes it feel all the more authentic, frankly. And so I really, really like that movie a lot too. Yeah,
it was you're right. It was a hard watch. It was a hard watch.
It really is. And it's really strong and brave performances by all involved, particularly the leading lady. Let's get her name on the record because she's really remarkable.
It is Andra Day.
Really, I mean, just a really, really, I mean, when we talk about the process of acting and stuff, but the rabbit hole that she had to go down to inhabit this person over this amount of time, and the struggles that she went through and stuff. I mean, we use the word as a cliche, but it's a brave performance. I was really, really impressed.
All right. Next up is Pieces of a Woman.
Oh man. We should have flipped this one to the end, but Pieces of a Woman, because Pieces of a Woman on this list is the movie that really got me. Read the synopsis if you have it in front of you. Otherwise, I can quick do one myself, because it really is two movies.
Right. Oh, come on.
There's a young couple out on the East Coast.
When a young mother's home birth ends in unfathomable tragedy, she begins a year-long odyssey of mourning that fractures relationships with loved ones in this deeply personal story of a woman learning to live alongside her loss.
The woman in this that's shattered to pieces by this event is played by
Vanessa Kirby,
who's, I think, had a remarkable ascendance, because when she was younger, she's a beautiful lady, don't get me wrong, but when she was younger and just this sort of hot chick, she played this sort of random, it's particularly English films cast her as this, other woman, your rich friend from college, the obnoxious chick that the hero needs to overcome to get the man she wants. They had her pigeonholed into this thing, which Vanessa was really, really good at playing these parts, because she makes a really strong impression, and due to various things, but largely due to her portrayals Princess Margaret in The Crown. She's become this just incredible, substantive leading woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never seen her better than she is in this film. She plays this working class, she's actually kind of rich. She's from a rich family. It's her hubby that's played by Shia LaBeouf that's working class. And there's some conflict and some things to explore there. But it's really about the trauma of this event that happens. They're having a home birth. The midwife that they've been working with is giving another birth across town when she surprisingly goes into labor. What's the name of the actor? She's extraordinary. That it plays the midwife that comes. I can't remember the name. Sorry for not remembering anybody's names. I should have.
Well, I mean, I don't know if there's Eliza Schlesinger, and there's Sarah Snook, Molly Parker.
Yep. Molly Parker. Sarah Snook's great in it too. Molly Parker. It's Molly Parker. She's this stranger that comes to their house to do this thing, this birth, and we go through the whole thing. It's this 25-minute scene. It's just an incredible scene, and it goes badly, and they lose the kid, and it's just the way that rattles everybody's world, and the way it brings not just the issues involved in that, but everything to the surface. Everybody's pushing and pulling for different things. They're trying to sue over the loss of the child, this midwife, and they're trying to, and it's all negative, terrible, awful, mournful stuff. And yet it's very, very vivid and believable and amazing. Ellen Bernstein's in it.
Yep.
Incredible performance by her, as you'd expect at this point. She rarely shows up in anything these days and isn't amazing. But it's Vanessa's film, and I can't say enough about it. It's tough. We just talked about a couple of tough movies. To get through this movie's tough as any of them. It's just really hard because it's so sad, but it just makes you feel something for real. You really go through it with her, and you're, by that time the thing's over, you're proud to have done so. I just think that's a remarkable accomplishment. So that film she was nominated for Best Actor, rightfully so.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. It's a powerhouse performance by Vanessa. Everybody's good in it. Shia's really good in it. Not an easy role to do. Everyone shows up, but she's just extraordinary and just embodied this woman that couldn't be any less like Vanessa in real life, and yet just did it in this incredibly believable way. I was knocked out by that film.
Cool.
My favorite on the also ran list, and one of my favorites probably just overall of that year.
All right, our final movie that we're going to talk about is One Night in Miami.
Yeah, see, that's
Regina King.
Regina King. There's a collection here, really fun. Not so much in 2020, but we'll give Regina King some props. There's a collection here of female actors doing their first-time directorial projects that, for the most part, you'll see when we get to that category, are very feminine, very female-centric. Regina picked this play, One Night in Miami, as her project, and it has hardly any women in it, and the ones that are in it are barely in it. It's about these four iconic men from this time period that we've spent a good portion of the show talking about.
Right.
It's Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, the football player / actor. And who's the other one? Why am I forgetting?
Sam Cooke. Yep, Sam
of course,
Cooke.
yeah, that's why I'm Sam Cooke. And this fictional meeting that they supposedly had. The premise behind the play is that they would get together every once in a while, the four of them, and talk over the direction of their careers, because they all recognized themselves as the pillars of the Black community in one way or another. But they all had dramatically different approaches to that, and that breeds conflict. And even though it's this fantasy of an idea, it's really, really fun to get caught up with these great actors playing these iconic people that are from different walks of life and use their influence very, very differently. And to see people that we now revere so highly, just trying to figure out how to survive from one moment to the next and getting advice from each other on how to do it. Sometimes welcomed and some unwelcomed advice. Sam Cooke and Malcolm X in particular at each other's throats basically the whole movie. It's a really neat project, but it's hard to grab onto in an emotional way. Even like the U.S. versus Billie Holiday, you have a reality that you can grab onto. There's no reality in this thing at all. It's shot in a very real, simple, kind of awesome way. So you can get carried away by it, but it's tough. I assume the play is like this too. The play probably on stage is amazing. One set, you sort of accept that easier, I think, than you do in a movie without the outside world. Sometimes they turn on the TV, which is clever. I bet you that happens, and because something's happening in the world that's really important that night. I can't remember what. It's how they are able to meet in secret. Like the film gives way too much thought to that when we don't really need it, since this never really happened. But
they're all in town for Muhammad Ali's fight, Cassius Clay's fight. Yeah.
Right. He's still Cassius Clay at this point.
Yep.
He's practicing Muslim, but he's doing it in the closet.
Yep.
Which, as you can imagine, is tricky. I don't know about Sam Cooke, but the other three gentlemen are all followers of the Nation of Islam eventually, if not in this particular moment. So that certainly is a connection between them. I really like that movie, but it's a setup, it's a gimmick, and you just kind of have to get over the what if this happened,
right?
Which you know what I mean. And then if you can do that, you get a really self-assured directorial debut from Regina King, and a really good, stage-worthy, script-first-worthy material, which is always welcome. So I was not emotionally carried away by that film, but it was still fascinating to sit through. I dug it. I liked as manufactured as it was, I liked the dramatic conflict. It carried the day very well.
Very, very cool.
And we should name the gentleman in it, probably.
Oh, sure, yeah. Kingsley Ben-Adir as Malcolm X, Eli Gorley as Cassius Clay, Aldous Hodge as Jim Brown, Leslie Odom Jr. as Sam Cooke.
Wow.
Yeah, and
that's just that alone should get you in the door to that one, I would think.
Yeah.
They're really good. That's a really elite group of actors playing these guys from history in a way that, while completely unbelievable from the scenario standpoint, really the characters are really grounded in what their frailties are. And as we always talk about on the show, that's a strong thing to get to witness. So,
yep.
And we'll leave it there. We check out.
That is going to do it for our we're dipping our toe into 2021. We promise next week there'll be a lot less of John Rambo. I'm not going to say that there won't be any John Rambo, because
you never know.
You never know.
There will definitely be less St. Elmo's Fire.
Very much so. All right. And so join us again next week. Of course, reach out to us at the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan page on Facebook, at Ask Joel and Ryan on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan page on YouTube, which, if you are watching this, please give us a like and click subscribe, and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast delights. Go ahead, leave us a message or leave us a review. We'll send you extra love energy into the universe. Okay, so you can email us, askjoelandryan@gmail.com. All right.
Hey,
so
email us, you guys. Bring some questions in for the new year.
That would be
Make
fun.
that one of your New Year's resolution. Just one question from each of you, and we'll have questions for the whole year.
Correct.
We'd really, really appreciate that. I know that's a lot to ask, and then you ask a cool question and I can't answer it, so we didn't even get on the show. I don't want to prolong this show anyway. We've overspent, but send us. It doesn't even have to be questions, comments. Hey, you didn't talk about this movie. Do it. Just boss us around.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.
Hey, Joel.
Hey, what?
The producers played me off, man. I thought they were my friends.
Sorry about that. I was like, oh,
that
he
was
hears
ruthless.
it. He's gonna hear the button. He's gonna.
It's all good. I deserve to be played off. Let's face it.
Could have given you the old